Professor Shantanu. Welcome to Thriving in the Age of Disruption podcast series. You were my professor at SMU,
Yes, please.
and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Same.
So, I started this podcast in 2021 whilst we were all in lockdown.
Mhm.
The idea was about getting change makers like yourself to share what you do and how you look at life so that you can inspire and motivate others.
So personally, Shantanu Bhattacharya grew up in Mumbai, studied in the US, worked in France, the US, and Singapore. Husband, father of two lovely kids, family member, good friend to a lot of people. Professionally, I'm a professor of operations management right now at Singapore Management University and deputy dean of education at Singapore Management University.
Very critical for today's VUCA world is an entrepreneurial mindset. I define an entrepreneurial mindset as one whereby you're being resourceful, as in you can identify the right problem because the right problem it's half solved.
Yes.
Number two is that you can manage uncertainty and take risks. And number three is that you can create value, both financial, non-financial, for yourself and for others. And so when I look at your career, being an academic as well as consulting and publishing research papers, I'm sure that you've had to lean on this entrepreneurial mindset. What are your views about it and how it has impacted your career?
Okay. So fair enough, Ramesh. I think that in terms of mindset, the entrepreneurial mindset that you described, being resourceful, being able to create value, being able to pivot, all of those are very important. Let me just share my thoughts in terms of what I view my mindset as. I was trained as an engineer, so my training has been from the perspective of rational engineering. So planning, analyzing, executing, optimizing, which is pretty long term, very similar to the way that the activities in my career have been organized. As you rightly pointed out, I do research, I consult, I teach. In terms of research, from germination of an idea to a publication of a paper, takes a good 3 years, at least in a top journal. You have multiple rounds of revision. The first draft gets changed completely, so that planning, analyzing, executing, optimizing approach is useful. But then there's the other mindset, the agile mindset of experimenting, adapting, learning, trying small things, seeing what works, adapting from that, learning from that, being flexible. An entrepreneur pivots when he or she sees strong evidence. So data-based, evidence-based management is very important. I find it a bit hard from my own personal perspective to say that one or the other is better. You need a bit of both. Exactly when to do which. If I knew, I would be a billionaire today and I wouldn't be talking to you. But unfortunately, I don't have a billion. So, from the little that I have achieved, I would say that an entrepreneurial mindset is something that requires you to be able to wear multiple hats. It
That's
requires you to take a guess on when pivoting is necessary. It requires you to take a guess on when I need to double down and follow the path that I've chosen at this particular stage.
And I totally concur with you about having both these skill sets. Given the disruption that we are seeing to business models, given that you are an expert in innovation management, what do you think is going to be a more important ability? Be agile or to stay rational? Because the opportunities for entrepreneurs are also quite different.
In terms of which of these two skills would gain importance, that's fairly easy to answer. As technology life cycles keep getting shorter, product and service life cycles keep getting shorter, the agile mindset will be of a higher degree of importance. At the same time, that learning mindset to me, being able to acquire skills quickly, being able to learn. Ramesh, we've talked about this recently. You and I came from an era where we did one degrees, maybe two, and then worked in a certain field based on that knowledge that we had acquired, based on the skills that we had acquired with those degrees for a longer period of time. The learning in the future will not necessarily be aligned to degrees, to formal education. It will be aligned much more to informal education. We already see that at universities. We already see that bite sized learning, that chunkified learning taking precedence over a long term degree. The degree is very important in terms of getting certain skills like critical thinking, analytic skills. But the ability to learn new skills, the ability to be able to change continuously, the ability to think critically has to be augmented based on the advent of new tools, of new technologies. So, to give a hard answer to your question, I would think that the agile mindset will take precedence in the future. At the same time, the ability to have rational skills will also be important. Maybe the depth will not be that easy to acquire as it was for our generation, simply because to have really deep skills in any field requires that field to be in vogue for a longer period of time. And more, what we are seeing is that at least in fast moving fields like technology, the knowledge that you acquire gets obsolete very quickly.
Right.
So, the rational engineering skills will still need to be augmented every few years, but the continuous training, the agile mindset probably will take precedence in the future.
Mm, right. What then is your hope or aspiration for your children who are probably entering the workforce in the next 5 to 10 years?
I think the word should be what is my fear for my children rather than hope for my children, given this kind of environment. The answer to that question, quite frankly, to my mind, is twofold. For a good part until the 19th century, the skills that people had were learnt as apprentices, they were learnt on the job. And
Yes.
then during the 20th century, that paradigm changed. The paradigm became one of mass education, university based education, education being tightly linked to work opportunities. So, if you take a look, at least for the last 100 years, the paradigm has been strongly true that a higher degree of education is an aspirational necessity to a higher lifestyle of living, right? So,
Right.
basically, the two of them were very inextricably linked. And to my mind, that will become a bit more loose. The need to be well trained, the need to be formally trained to have a good career, that will become a bit more loose. What will take precedence instead is the ability to understand the needs of businesses, the needs of markets for the individual and for society. Society basically has taken a viewpoint that we will have some degree of redistribution of wealth through the structure of taxation of organizations and individuals. So there is some degree of redistribution of wealth in the form of creation of infrastructure opportunity. Okay, that will change. I don't think that we will be at a stage anymore where we will have the ability to have the free market dictate what each individual needs in terms of skill, because by the time the free market reacts, the world has already moved on. So the lead time of the reaction of the free market versus the lead time of the reaction of the consumer market, I don't think that the pace of these will be as synchronized to each other as we've had in the past. So the needs for consumer markets will move more quickly. So, in terms of gathering skills, the core skills of critical thinking, of pivoting, the of learning on the job will become much more important as jobs change. The ability to learn on the job becomes much more important. The ability to sort of train formally takes a backseat. My viewpoint is that the need to go to a top class university for a top class degree, that's becoming less and less important. I don't think parents should worry so much about which university my child goes to, what is the field that my child has, because you don't really have visibility into what field will be important. Plumbing feels like manual skill labor. They just might make a comeback. There's a lot of talk about the fact that AI can take over a lot of mid-level supply chain management jobs, but AI cannot do plumbing for you. Robots cannot have the
That's right.
judgment of what to do in terms of clogging a leaked pipe. There you will need some kind of human judgment. So again, the answer to that question is not very clear to me. All I know is that there will be many more opportunities for you to make mistakes and learn. So the ability to experiment, adapt, and learn, that agile mindset becomes even more important. You basically go for some kind of formal training. I don't think that I would tell my children to sort of eschew university completely and move on to a plumbing diploma or whatever. But what I would say is that don't assume that you will do this for the next 20
30
years of
years.
your life. What will more likely be true is that you will do this for a shorter period of time and then move forward.
In our consulting, the focus is very much on a learning organization, that people are learning from the mistakes and the things that worked well and embedding it back.
At one point of time, the degree of control that we exercised on our environment was higher. As the environment moves faster, that degree of control goes lower and lower, which is actually a good thing. Because in the past, we could always say that we made these mistakes and why did we make these mistakes? We could blame ourselves. Now that necessity to blame ourselves is also getting
Yes.
weaker and weaker, because there's only so many things that you can control, right? There's only so many things that you can predict. The nature of disruption is that it's cyclical. Everything will get disrupted. What can be standardized will be standardized. The ability to think out of the box, the ability to innovate will get more and more important. So I hope that my kids learn innovation the hard way by innovating. It's hard to sort of say that this particular curriculum is more innovative, or at least will make you more innovative than this particular curriculum. Life's hard knocks have to teach you how to innovate.
Hmm. It's interesting that you would call out disruption and life's hard knocks as the secret sauce for people to learn to survive this new world.
Mhm.
The second mindset that I talk about is the crisis ready mindset. A failure or a setback, and have built the coping mechanism or have a support structure to be able to navigate that.
Mhm.
The people who do that successfully are those who have developed it from young. Either you have some daily practice, or, like you said, had life's hard knocks. What do you think is going to support someone to navigate crisis effectively? And maybe you can share from your own experience, professionally or personally.
So the good news about working at a university, Ramesh, is that crises hit universities very infrequently. In fact, when the economy goes through a downturn, the enrollment at universities increase because people come to universities to reskill themselves during times of downturn. So yes, like everybody else, I've had my share of personal and professional crises. From my perspective, the most critical elements in terms of getting over crises, being able to understand crises, is first of all, develop a philosophical worldview. What can go wrong? Often, in my own moments of worry, I ask myself the question, what exactly are you sort of worried about? I mean, take a look at the world. The world has so many crises. You have people who don't have access to basic water. You have people in war zones who, until yesterday, had a job, had a family life, and today they are refugees in some other country. So, whatever misfortune you have, there is always somebody else's crisis that gives you a sense of proportion, that gives you a sense of perspective. I think that sense of perspective is very important. I think that we need to sometimes just stop and say we should be grateful for what we have. And we have to realize that life works in a continuum, that there will be continuity, that there will be things to happen after this. The whole notion of crisis management is basically predicated on three different parts. The first part is the immediate aftermath, which is, very dear family member, especially if it's untimely. I have lost my father in 2020. He passed away at the age of 88. It wasn't really a crisis to me, simply because he lived a very good life. But when there is an untimely loss at that time, I can understand fully that people go through a severe crisis in life. And what would that person have wanted you to do? That person would have wanted you to go on, continue. You don't live your life just for yourself. You live your life for an entire ecosystem. You live your life for an entire society surrounding you. When you take that perspective, that whatever crisis I had, I still have responsibilities. It's very important in the immediate aftermath of any crisis to stay grounded to the fact that, yes, one part of my life has been upended, but there are other parts of my life that I should be grateful for that are continuing as normal. And for every dark cloud, there's also the silver lining. There will be opportunities in the future. So that's a question of faith, of belief, the ability that you have to bounce back. You have to believe in yourself. I don't think that that belief is unjustified. You may never get back to whatever ambition you had, whatever standard you had earlier, but that's unimportant. You're making these standards up for yourself. So it's important to be able to say that there is always someone not as fortunate as you. And that person who is not as fortunate as you should also be a benchmark in that you got more chances. Make sure that you keep continuing on the chances that you get because not everyone is as lucky as you.
Right. Very interesting. You've called out a couple of interesting counterintuitive thoughts for people to look at crisis. First of all, you said, what is there to worry about? Because what may be a crisis for you in the larger context might be a very small thing. Number two is that you also talked about what happens after, because we don't live for ourselves. We live in an
Yes,
ecosystem. We're a
absolutely.
mother, we're a sister, we're a daughter.
Yeah.
And there are other people who are also looking for our leadership, for our guidance. And in that crisis, if we let everything go, then we'll do further damage.
We grew up in a resource constrained environment.
Ah, that's true.
And often, what I think is that I have all these thoughts as you that our parents, of course, claim to go to school literally fighting crocodiles and storms and lions on their way to school and back with three siblings on their back and so on. Of course, they made their life seem a bit more difficult compared to what it was. And sometimes we should not get the impression that our children have lives substantially simpler than ours. From the current generation's perspective, I think the plethora of choices that they have makes it a bit harder for them to focus. And I'm not so sure that they are that different from our generation. And there are hard knocks to be had for all generations. From my perspective, my primary thinking has been that with respect to my next generation, my children, my nephews, nieces, and so on, try not to focus so much on the fact that their life has been easy. Try and understand what their difficulties are. At one point of time, we used to have a social life that was almost given to us. I grew up in an environment where I had 20 kids of my age. We used to just go down from where we were living, and then there were 20 kids playing over there. We just became the 21st. We ran along with the ball. And in today's nuclear families, in today's families where distances between neighbors is increasing, that socializing is something that they are missing. So, how do we get that level of social interaction? How do we get them to appreciate the value of social interaction? How do you get them to appreciate the value of being able to sort of talk to people you don't know that well, but be able to lighten yourself, to be able to have a more open relationship, to be able to be asked for a cup of sugar when you run out of sugar in your home? All these things are things that we had to sort of as advantages in our generation that they don't have. So they are fighting a very different set of battles compared to the battles that we fought in our generation. So see is what are the challenges that they are facing and how can we help them in terms of overcoming some of these challenges. Technology interaction, the current generations, they connect much more over technology compared to face interaction. I think we are all worried about the fact that the next generation does not have that personal touch that we had. Most of the sort of the connections that they have are via technology. Maybe that is something we need to embrace and see how to make those connections healthier, how to sort of use those connections so that they can be closer to each other. It's not always about economic well-being or opportunity. It's about understanding that as generations change, the hardships that they face change. Mental health, definitely, it's something that at our generation, we didn't even recognize it, right? I mean, most
Yeah,
people of our generation, we laugh. If I told my mother that I was depressed, she would slap me, and then I would sort of say that, hey, I'm not depressed anymore,
that's
whatever.
true.
But it's a fact that mental health is a big concern. And the general consensus that it's just an issue of the younger generation simply not true. It's something that we had, and we were just not taught how to deal with it. How do we equip our next generation with the ability to have that resilience, to have that mental health? These are still things that I'm not sure I have very clear answers to, but I'm definitely looking for those answers.
You've called out a very important aspect of generational transition. And we work with family businesses. That's also their greatest challenge. It's the miscommunication that happens and the conflict that arises due to multiple roles that individuals play, or what they perceive in terms of expectation. At the heart of all this is perhaps learning to communicate openly
Yes,
in a
absolutely.
way that does not hurt each other and diminish each other, so that at least we can keep the relationships intact. In our consulting, we focus on resolving the conflict and restoring trust. The first step is actually to support people to actually discover their personal purpose, and then to create the alignment to the family's purpose. In the past, 15, 20 years ago, we just cascade the vision down. But today, it's more of an alignment process where there has to be ownership with all parties that have a seat at the table together, co-create something for everyone, both the older generation and the younger generation, to actually change.
Very fair. In terms of family businesses, the challenge is indeed, as you rightly pointed out, the paths taken by the founder's generation and by the next generation are very different. The founder took the stairs. So the founder walked from customer to customer, found out pain points, then came up with an initial solution at a very low scale, and basically managed to find a solution which he or she or as a family diligently scaled to some degree of success. And the next generation, they've taken the lift. They have not gone through this sort of process of going from customer to customer, traveling in foreign countries, looking for products to trade with in my home country, and so on. So they have basically come up and grown up in a world where this is the current status. And
Yes.
now what they're looking for is how do I get to the next level? And often what the founders try and do is try and train them, skill them, which is sort of very common for parents to try and say, I want to teach my children the skills that I have learned. Your children need to learn on your own, not taught by giving them a set of principles, but more by exposure to a set of circumstances. And then the second part is letting go. As a philosophy, I would say that this is something that you have to do to your children, to your students, to the different stakeholders whom you care for. You can only bring the horse to the water, you cannot make the horse drink. Right? You should not try to sort of force your thinking. Everybody has a learning journey. This notion of I want to make an impact on society. I read up a lot on the vastness of the universe. I strongly believe that by Bayesian inferencing, given the fact that we are here, there is intelligent life in the universe that can reach us, but they leave us alone. They are not trying to make an impact on us. They are not trying to make us more sustainable. They are not teaching us how to save the earth. They are leaving us to do it for ourselves.
Yes.
Shouldn't we offer the same luxury to our
Mm.
stakeholders? Shouldn't the philosophy be that we will do everything we can to help you in your journey, But at some stage, my role is not to make an impact on the world. My role is to give agency to the world. My role is to basically let the world make its own decisions. I don't have the right to try to impose my values, my beliefs on others. That is not impact. That may be something that's good for my soul, but it is not good for others. Let people make their own mistakes. I think that's a very important part of learning. As the previous generation, we can only sort of provide all the tools, provide the different resources that the next generation desires. But I don't think that we've done so well in our own lives as a generation, as a society, as individuals, that we know the best answers to everything. So I think what we ought to do is let them live their own life. Making impact may not be the best goal. Giving people the ability to shape their own lives may be a better goal.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. So there is a very fine line, right, between making impact and letting them shape their own lives.
Yes.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, this very goal of making impact basically says, I want to work for the betterment of society, of the environment. To me, that goal is a bit misplaced. It's a bit challenged. For a simple reason, what exactly do I know about that impact that I want to make that gives me the authority to sort of impose my sense of values, my sense of beliefs on the other stakeholders in my community so that I can make that impact? What exactly is making impact? What exactly is working for the betterment of society? Is it, economic upliftment? Am I really sort of doing the best thing for my kids by trying to make them go to the best universities and then having the best lifestyle? Because that connection between universities and lifestyles is something I know to be true in my generation, may not be true in their generation, right?
Mm.
So those are the kinds of things I mean that when everybody talks in a generic sense about making impact, doing good, what exactly is good, right? As far as that good is giving opportunities to others to make the choice, that I think definitely is good in my own books. But as far as it's making choices for others in that this is good for you, that does definitely does not work for me.
Yeah, yeah. Where are you in your spiritual journey? And what's spirituality for you?
A determined pursuit of amber colored liquids that keep me in high spirits. That's spirituality for me. On a more serious
Serious
note,
note.
pragmatism, being solidly grounded, is spirituality. Living my everyday life with a sense of purpose is spirituality. Being authentic to myself is spirituality. The way to transcend my disappointments, the way to sort of go over whatever I faced in terms of crises, move forward, be a source of strength, be a source of resources to my near and dear ones, have that connection to my family, to my friends, to society. Those to me represent spirituality. I'm not particularly in search of God. I'm not particularly in search of meaning. I do some things every day, and those to me are heavy in meaning. Am I happy waking up? Am I happy going to my job every day? Those to me are sort of questions that I address when I look at the big picture. Am I happy in what I am doing? I absolutely think so. The world goes on, whether I sort of start thinking about, am I really adding value or not? Those thoughts will not really add value anyway. Adding value is something I do in my everyday life. When I tie my son's shoelaces, when I take my daughter to her tuition class, I do add value in everyday small things. The small things add up to the big things. Keep grounded, don't look for meaning because large scale meaning, there is no meaning. As far as that is achieved, that to me is spirituality.
Mm. I think your definition is very liberating. And it's a positive call for people to actually live in the present, to just find meaning in whatever that we are doing,
Right.
rather than think that we have to do something to then find the meaning.
Because whatever you do at a later stage, when your vision gets bigger, the lens gets bigger, whatever you have done at that stage will get smaller. So you cannot keep moving in a direction where you want to change the world, you want to change the universe, you want to change the galaxy. It doesn't work that way. You have your small microcosm. If you can make positive change in your microcosm, you're doing well already.
Awesome. And on a similar note, then, do you think it's possible to live a simple life? And what's a simple life for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to me, a simple life is as simple as myopic focus, one step at a time, no overthinking. I'm 50 plus. There are times, what have I done? Really, have I done anything? No, I've not done anything, but I've not done much damage too. That's how I console myself. So there are positives to not doing much damage to society, to nature, to others, and so on. Okay. So I think that living a simple life starts with taking one step at a time, being grounded, being pragmatic, being myopic. Of course, the things like aspirations, like everybody else, I enjoy my business class travel when I get it. I enjoy my economy class travel when I get it. It's not about aspirations being material or not. Simple living to me doesn't have anything to do with luxury. If that luxury is there, it's something that's in my luck, I'll get it. If it's not, it doesn't make a difference to me. As a provider of a family, I think putting others' needs over me, that to me is much more important. The ability to be able to sort of give a grounded experience, at the same time give the smaller pleasures of life to my near and dear ones. That is living a simple life. And so far, I don't think that there has been any point of life where I have missed not having something. I There are lots of points in my life where I feel that this is a bit unfair. I don't deserve everything that I've got.
I got that. How would you describe thriving in life?
That's a good question. To me, thriving is basically going about things the same thing as I just talked about. Thriving is, do I enjoy coming to work every day? Yes.
Mm,
Do I fret about the small things in life? The answer I would like to give is no, but I haven't reached that state of nirvana yet. So I still fret about the small things in life. And then I do question myself that is this really worth over? Am I grateful for who I am and what I have? Absolutely. These are the sort of three or four questions that I think you have to ask if you want to sort of know whether you're thriving or not. Today, I find that people don't need to be competitive to be able to say that they are thriving. Today,
mm.
people can look at absolute standards and say that, yes, I have achieved this, I've achieved that, I have this, I have that. I can consider myself to be thriving.
Okay, I'm going to ask you some very quick, fun questions. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book is an operations management called The Goal by Eliyahu Goldratt.
And if you could have dinner with anyone, who would it be?
APJ Abdul Kalam.
Oh, and what would you ask him?
I would ask him what motivated you all your life. He was an orphan. He studied at the Ramakrishna Mission. He did everything in life without having aspirations to what he wanted to do. And he eventually achieved more compared to what all of us do in several lifetimes. So, to my mind, that link between achievement, aspirations, and, just loving what you do is best exemplified by him. You don't need to be sort of competitive. You don't need to be aspirational to be able to do good.
That's right. Mm. And if you can have a superpower, what would it be?
World peace, take away child hunger, the
Really?
usual stuff. I mean, super strength is not really useful. A large amount of wealth would make people envious. And then I would sort of be always scared of who's trying to scam me out of my wealth, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
just the regular things, trying to make everyone have
The
basic amenities
collective.
would be good enough for me.
Right. And, what's the best advice that you received in your life?
It's from Professor Sirking. The small things take care of the big things. Don't
Ah,
fret about the small things. Okay. There is some kind of balance in terms of fortune. Small pieces of bad fortune make way to large pieces of good fortune at a later stage. So
That's
don't
good.
fret the small things. I think
That's
that's very telling. That's very
yeah.
profound as well.
What's the world of operations management and how does that impact our life?
Well, operations management is everything that's value adding. Operations management is the understanding of processes to be able to convert inputs to outputs. So, any product, any service, any software is a part of operations management. Operations management is the study of processes to be able to take a process perspective. If the process is good, then the outcome is good. Life is a process. The outcome is the same for everyone, right? I mean, we all end up, we come from dust, we end up in the dust. But the process is what makes who we are. So, operations management is the study of all processes. Using a process perspective, we take a look at different activities in all value adding organizations, manufacturing, services, software, and see how we can use process improvement principles to make processes better.
Then what about supply chain management?
Supply chain management is the integration of processes at different organizations. So, for example, if you take the journey of any product or any service, from raw materials to finished goods for a product, from the base information and the base customer to the delivery of the service, you go through a series of different steps. Now, for a very simple product service, all those steps may be performed by one organization, in which case we call it process management at the operations management level. In most cases, for complex products and complex services, the value adding steps are done by different organizations.
Right.
So, supply chain management is the study of processes at multiple firms in terms of the conversion of raw inputs into final outputs. Okay. How do these firms work with each other, coordinate with each other, make sure that the processes that each one of those companies have and the outcomes of the organizations align perfectly to create value for the final end customer?
Right. Today, everyone is concerned about the tariffs. And so when something like that happens, it has a big impact in terms of costing your product correctly. How do you actually navigate a tariff change as a manufacturer? What would you have to look at?
So, first of all, let me just sort of say a couple of words on the philosophy of Trump's tariffs. Uh, the US actually had its golden period. It's still the world's economic leader, but the golden period of the US was post World War II. Okay.
Hmm.
Until the 70s, lifestyles in the US were constantly improving. Manufacturing and services worked together in the US. The ability for employment was the highest. So I would say that up till the mid 70s, the US had its golden era. And then what happened was, as prosperity became more and more evident, the cost of manufacturing, the cost of value add also grew, right?
Hmm.
Because, if you have to manufacture with labor in the US, the cost becomes higher and higher. So then manufacturing began moving out, and that's the story of every society. Every society goes through agriculture, manufacturing, services, with the exception of India. India went from agriculture to services, it jumped the manufacturing stage. Hopefully, they
Right.
can get that manufacturing stage also at some stage as one of the big drivers of the macroeconomy. But in the US, they went through the agriculture to the manufacturing to the services stage, and manufacturing became obsolete because the economic structure said so. And Trump basically wants to bring the world back to the 60s, to the 70s, when you have a mixed economy in terms of agriculture, manufacturing, and services. He has to try. I think he has to try. So I am not one of those skeptics who basically says that this is just wrong. Okay. I see his motivation in trying it. I just don't know if the circumstances will enable him, if the environment will enable him, because tariffs are actually a very blunt instrument. Whom does tariff really tax? Now, if the costing can be done in such a way that the product can be produced in a cheaper way in the US, in that case, of course, tariffs make perfect sense, but that's simply not true, right? So, what basically tariffs do is that make products that are coming in from elsewhere more expensive so that the
Hmm.
more expensive products in the US make sense, which defeats the purpose of an efficient economy in the first place.
Correct.
Now, if we can get the technological support enablement of technology to make manufacturing cheaper, that's a separate matter. We have to wait and see if there can be a confluence of technology and better skilled workers who can get a higher quality, higher value add. Okay, of course, at a higher cost, because the cost
Yeah.
of labor will still be high. But can that be achieved? We have to wait and see. Do tariffs really change supply chains? They do over a very long period of time. Supply chains are ecosystems. See, you can impose a tariff in terms of final product. But if the raw materials are going to be produced in different countries, if they are going to be value added in different countries, if they are going to be transported not as finished goods but as finished components to the US, then all you're doing is basically making assemblies in the US. You're not really adding that much value, right? So then the difference between what's happening today versus what's going to happen tomorrow with tariffs, in the best outcome, it's not going to really achieve much, because you will
Mm.
still get high cost components and a high cost of assembly. So effectively, what has to happen for this tariffs policy to be successful is ecosystems have to move. Ecosystems have to move, raw materials, value add at every stage has to be achieved in a much more efficient manner. I wouldn't say necessarily cost effective. It's not going to be cost effective, but then the quality and the performance has to be that much better. The value add has to be that much higher for this to be successful. Will ecosystems move easily? The answer is no. I was asked the question recently for apparel, sports equipment ecosystems. And it's very obvious that ecosystems have been entrenched in Asia for such a long time that even if you impose tariffs on the end products, there are a million ways to subvert these tariffs by sort of producing components at a low cost and then moving the assembly to a country that has relatively low tariffs. So effectively, all you're doing is juggling centers in the global economy.
Right.
Tariffs really changing supply chains in the long term, I guess, can be done theoretically, but the journey towards that particular outcome is just so complex, tedious, and long that I doubt if it will ever be achieved. My prognosis is that the tariffs will continue for his term. He's not the kind of person to sort of step back and say, I made a mistake. I also don't fault him for trying. I think that given the stakeholders and given the mandate, he is justified in terms of trying. But will it succeed? Economic conditions dictate that ecosystems have to be relayed for that. And for ecosystems to have that much higher value add, cost is sort of more localized today, but technology travels. If something can be done at a better level of technology to add a higher level of value in the US, that technology will travel. It's hard for you to sort of keep a barrier on technology. And that same can be achieved in other locations.
Correct.
So that's why I believe that this journey is just too tedious for it to be able to be stuck with in the long run.
Well, thank you for, sharing your experience in this area. Shantanu, I appreciate that. I've come to the end of our podcast. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Take care. Yeah, listeners, if you've been listening and enjoying the Thriving in the Age of Disruption podcast series, as well as our Mastery Effect podcast series, we'll appreciate it very much if you can share with us the topics that are close to your heart so that we can source the relevant experts and change makers and have them be on our show. Do comment below and let us know where you are commenting from and what is it that is of biggest concern to you.